everybody. Welcome back to the Renegade Society radio show. Thank you so much for joining us this Friday, October 30th. It is All Hallows Eve. It's super spooky. And we have two super spooky guests for you. I mean, they're not really spooky people, I guess, per se, but we have some spooky stuff coming your way that they're both involved with. So yes, thank you so much for joining us. Before we get into it, I just want to remind everybody, we do have Power Rangers, Heroes of the Grid, Rise of the Psycho Rangers, the expansion, and the Villain Pack Machine Empire that just came out. So you can check out your friendly local game store for those, or the Renegade Game Studios online web store, as well as for Tome Saga and Viscounts of the West Kingdom. Tome Saga is super cool because it allows you to basically put all three games of that trilogy together. And we also just wanted to remind you of our new Twitch schedule. So we have More Phenomenal Mondays at 6 p.m. PST, and we have Vampire Wednesdays at 8 p.m. PST now. So just keep an eye on that schedule because we do have a few little changes happening. We're also going to be doing a giveaway today, and we are going to be giving away a Kids on Bikes Deluxe hardcover edition, and that code word will be given away later on in the show. So please, keep those ears open and watch out in the chat as Desiree will be providing that link for you there. Also, if you have any questions for these amazing guests, put those questions in the chat because we'll be getting to that later. We'll be holding on to those questions and we will be coming back to them, I promise. All right, so now let's get into it. So with me today, I have TC Petty III, an amazing game developer on Kids on Bikes, the board game, the Snallygaster Situation, and we also have Michael Addison, who is a designer on this game. He designed it along with John Gilmore, so all very exciting stuff. And yes, Kids on Bikes, the board game. I'm so excited about it. Welcome, my friends. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you so much for being here with me. So yeah, as you can tell, I'm very excited about Kids on Bikes, the Snallygaster Situation. I still have not played Kids on Bikes, the RPG, but I have a lot of friends that play it and have told me all about all of that fun. And it sounds like so much fun. And I love board games and I love RPGs and I love this world. So I'm really excited. And this is based in the world of Kids on Bikes, the RPG. So I'm just wondering, first off, what was it like to sort of make a board game that's set in the Kids on Bikes RPG universe? And, what are the challenges of that? And were there things that surprised you? But before we get to that, tell me about who you are and tell me about what you do and, where we can find you in your work online. Getting ahead of myself. I'm just excited.
I'll jump ahead, but I'm going to let him answer I'm going to let Mike answer when it comes to designing the game because he had the idea along with John Gilmore. So I want to know how
Sure.
So I am a developer for Renegade Games. Behind me, even though it's really hard to see, I just put a big stack of things that just magically appeared behind me of all the games I've been working on. I've worked with them for about 3 years now, almost 3 years.
Wow.
And yeah, so we have a good catalog of games that I've worked on. I'm also a game designer. If you know me, usually, if anyone knows me, which may not be the case. If you do know me, though, you probably know me as a game designer, multiple games, and also just because it's hard this time. Last year, I was the writer on Moons of Madness, a video game. Ooh. So I was wearing my moon with werewolf T-shirt.
That's so cool.
But yeah, so I'm into horror. I'm into this and into game design.
Amazing. That's so cool. And I love to see that you basically are just wearing all these hats. That's so impressive.
Yeah, I would get bored if I wasn't.
Oh, well, I'm going to have to ask you more about that later. So that's definitely a thing. But yes, Michael, tell us a little bit more about yourself as well. What you do,
Sure.
Where we can find you.
Yeah, so I'm a game designer and game publisher. The two games that I've released so far are Space Princess, which is a 2-player strategy game, and an RPG called The Curse of the House of Brookwood, where you play a spooky supernatural family that has skeletons in their closet, and you are trying to fight monsters while also burying the skeletons that are in your closet.
Literally burying them?
Well, sometimes it comes to that. And here's some
Ooh,
beautiful cover art by the talented Morgan Corbell.
amazing.
Artwork for us.
Yeah,
And you can find out more about that at nerdypupgames.com. And I'm
amazing.
also on Twitter and Facebook at nerdypupgames.
Yay. Yeah, I definitely saw The Curse of Brookwood, and I am super into that whole setting and the whole story of it. I was reading it up a little bit on it before. And I'm assuming you're also then a horror fan as
Oh
well.
yes, definitely, absolutely.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, I guess as well, even with this game, I assume you would have to be. So yeah, Michael, if you want to tell us a little bit more just about what it was like to combine sort of these two worlds, because obviously Kids on Bikes has uh, a very stylized setting, which I think is so great and easy to tap into. But it's also an RPG. So what is that like? What was it like to sort of come together on that? And then I guess John also worked on the RPG, so you do have him there to sort of maybe guide you, or I don't know, did you come
Well,
up with it together?
yeah, so there was a little bit of parallel development. So John designed Kids on Bikes with Doug Lewandowski, and the two of them started on an RPG kind of about the same time that John and I started working on a board game. It was inspired by all the sort of things, the movies and the big hit Netflix TV show that we won't
Yes.
mention for copyright reasons. So we had this vision of a cooperative game with this unique dynamic of a player that's on your side but can't communicate with you, but has to make the bad things happen on the board, with all these themes of kids and danger and not being able to rely on adults and creepy monsters. And when the opportunity came to make this kind of flow into the world of Kids on Bikes, it just seemed like a natural fit. And the thing that really, like, the one big challenge I would say was the concept of the powered character from Kids on Bikes. So in that RPG, everyone makes their own character, and it can be a town person or a kid, it could be a teen, but you're just kind of normal folks that are dealing with these strange things happening in your town. And everyone in the group has shared ownership of the special character, the powered character, that it could be any number of different special powers that they have, but they end up becoming an important role in your story. And there's kind of usually a mystery that goes along with who they are.
Ooh.
And it's something that everyone at the table has input on what they do and how they think and how they act. And so when it came to taking this cooperative game idea and making it work with Kids on Bikes, it just seemed like a natural fit to make this powered character align with this lost kid role. So that's what we did.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so your goal in the Snallygaster situation is you have a situation where usually like maybe with a Snallygaster, maybe some other monster that you're trying to resolve, but then you also have this lost kid that you're trying to find that has been trapped by that monster somewhere in the town. And so while all the other players are running around town trying to advance through the story, they also have the goal of trying to find this lost kid. And once they reveal them, then they get to bring that powered character from the RPG into the game, and then that becomes the role of the person that was doing the monster control stuff. Now they get to play the powered character and help save the day at the end.
Wow, that sounds really rewarding. That sounds like a really rewarding gaming experience, which I want to commend you on, because I have played. One thing I was going to talk about, as I was saying before, when we were all chatting and waiting to come on here, I was just talking to everyone about how I was just so excited about this game in general. I just really had too many questions to ask. And one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about was, how does this game differ from other cooperative games? And I think you kind of just answered that.
Sure, yeah.
In that very successful ramp up. And making a player, I think it's really hard to make a player who kind of is a little bit more removed from the gameplay aspect, in the sense of, doing the actions and all of that, making them feel included. So I think that's really, really cool. What was it like as well for UTC developing this game? Because I know you said you can't really comment on the design challenges, or sounds like it wasn't that challenging. Sounds like it all came together really nicely.
Yeah, of course. It came together in like 2
Sounds
days.
like it's beautiful. Yeah. 2 days, nothing. But it sounds like overall thematically, it really lends greatly to what you were already working on, Michael, with John. But how was developing this game? And it does sound like, TC, maybe you are alluding to, there were some things that were at least challenging along the way there.
I think so. I mean, mainly, I think the contribution that I was trying to make was making a game that, well, both Renegade, like everybody at Renegade would be happy about, right, and could promote and be into, but also to bring out the story elements, right? Because I think so. I mean, being a writer and stuff, I kind of just like want to insert story everywhere, and so in this case, that's kind of what happened. I sort of was like, okay, they have 4 monsters and there's goals to vanquishing those monsters, right? But adding in a sort of a narrative to it. So when you complete a goal, you'll actually flip that card over and you'll get to read a new thing and it'll unlock a special ability that you have. And so players don't just do one thing. You're not just trying to beat the monster. You're like, I am trying to find the lost kid. I am also trying to seal away the monster. And I'm also trying to talk to this person in town who is like a priest at a church, but not really, you know, that sort of feeling. And as you play, that narrative kind of emerges. So even in the basic actions, even something like he was talking about how you search around the town. As kids, you'll search around to these different buildings. And kids, what's cool and what was definitely cool about the original system is that kids go anywhere. Like, you know, like adults, they follow roads, they stay in houses, they do their thing. But of course, kids, they'll just like go over a fence, they'll do this, they'll go. So you're just going around wherever you want, whereas everyone else follows a sort of pattern if they move, right? And so what's cool is when you search different places, you get a little bit of narrative every single time. You get to read a card, you get to make a choice, and then maybe even have like a little quest that's on the card. And then you have to go do it, you know, and all those things come together to make like a cool co-op experience. While that's going on, the Lost Kid is trying desperately not to make the monster do horrible things. Because they get to control a little bit of that movement of the monster with their powers. So it's like, big tug between things.
That's so cool. And I really love that sort of element of these potential side quests that you can also sort of explore and bringing that story in. I really love games that are very thematic as well when it comes to board games and just even my own preferences. And I think it really does make the gaming experience a lot stronger in many ways. So it's really cool to hear you express all of those different elements of how that comes in. And how is it in terms of having all of these different paths that people can do and sort of go down towards this one? So the main objective of the game then is to find the lost kid. And then we also have all of these other things that we need to manage. Is that sort of how it works?
I guess I'll just speak to it and then Mike can speak to it too. It's just one of those things where I think the main objective is defeat the monster. But along the way, there's all these different things that you can do. And finding the lost kid is essential to defeating the monster, right? If you do not find it, you can't beat the monster. Because
you need that powered up. You need that.
Yeah, you need it for the final confrontation, which helps out, right? So it is important, like, because there are 4 different monsters that are in the game, you will encounter them during the course of the game and try to beat those things individually. And so each game is one monster, each game is one story, and then you have multiple stories to tell during the course of multiple games, I guess.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, and what's clever about what TC has done with organizing the story that happens in the game is that rather than having to deal with it sounds like a lot of things that you're trying to do at once, you're actually going through. So the story is broken down into individual steps. You have this objective, so you complete that objective, and then that leads you to another objective. Sometimes, I guess, some of the scenarios you might have more than one to start out with, but it's not overwhelming. You feel like you're going through the acts of a story. And just like the design of the game is built to help you do that, so you're not trying to figure out what you're supposed to do next.
That's so cool. It sounds very sleek, which I like. How do you also
It's a perfectly sleek design.
Sleek, yeah. You know, it's like when you're, I guess the way I'm thinking of it is it's like when you're progressing, I mean, through a story in anything, through a story in a book, through a story in a video game that you're experiencing. I mean, I think a video game is always closer a little bit more to board games because it is this connection of a narrative and you're an experience. You're experiencing this story, but I think it is very sleek. It sounds like in the way that it's all planned out and that it ramps up. I'm excited to experience this ramp up because it sounds amazing. How do you work with as well the narrative that you're exploring in the game with keeping that fresh in the design there, Michael? And I guess TC, you can probably also inform a little bit on this as well in terms of development.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So what's important is to have a lot of different things that can happen that's unique every time you play.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, in Snallygaster Situation, you have so you're searching around for useful items. Every time you search, you're going to get a card, and then you have a little bit of snippet of story there that you may not see that the next time you play. There's a variety of characters that you can start with, so you may not be playing the same group of characters every time. And of course, there's a range of powered characters. So once you reveal the lost kid, you might end up having a completely different lost kid each time. And then, of course, like TC was saying, each monster is different. It has its own abilities. It has its own. Some of them have their completely different movement than every other monster. And then they all are defeated in different ways. So there's a lot of variety there.
Wow. Yeah, that does sound like a lot of variety. Do you have anything to add to that, TC?
Yeah, I was just saying, I think it's fun to just, because you have a player that is also sort of playing that game of like, I want to tell you stuff, but I can't. It's really good for them to have a different puzzle each time. And so hopefully with the way that you have specific cards that only come out during one monster. So like if you're playing against Bloody Mary, for example, Bloody Mary secretly moves behind the lost kid's screen. So you can't tell where she is on the board. And then on top of that, she has her own cards that go into the search deck that make it worse as those come out, but also you need to search for it because you need pages of a ritual book to seal her away.
Oh my goodness. She sounds terrifying.
She is. And
definitely. Bloody Mary is the scariest one out of the four.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Sounds scary. I like it.
It's hilarious and I won't spoil anything because the ending of that story is my favorite because it's just a hilarious little thing that, kids couldn't possibly do this, but it's wonderful.
It happens.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful that how it happens, right? So, but that's this kind of the cool thing that you'll have, right? Like the lost kid, even though they are not actively on the board moving around, they always feel like they're playing a slightly different game. I actually recommend, if you bought the game and you're playing it for the first time, you read the rules, you should probably play that character so that everybody else can work around that, right?
Cool.
So yeah, it's very cool.
Is there anything in the rules? I'm always looking for, when it's deciding like who's going to be first player and all those fun things. Is it in the rules too that you recommend that the owner of the game take the role of the lost kid in honor of their owning it?
It might be. I can't remember.
Yeah? Oh, okay. Because I feel like that would be a super cool thing. It's okay if you can't remember.
I can't remember.
You heard it here first,
I know it was talked
friends,
about. Yeah, you heard it here
once
first.
you get it. Yeah, we're recommending
putting me on the spot.
If it's not in the rules, it is now. We just decided. There you go. So as well, TC, speaking of sort of all of the things you've going on, and I'm sure you also just have a lot going on. So don't worry if I haven't even read all of the rules. So
yeah, but I gotta go. Thanks for having me on.
But But you also have another sort of a secret project that's upcoming and is going to be kickstarted with Renegade as well. So what is that about? Tell us more about that. And I think we also have some artwork that you were able to share with us.
I was able to secretly share some artwork. Of course, with both games, I wanted to share more. I just wanted to just keep sneaking it in, but I'm not going to.
So the first one I have up right now is just a sneak peek at the Snallygaster Situation, and then I have the other ones. As soon as you want me to switch to the other ones, I can do that.
All right. Well, yeah, we can talk about that a little bit too. So yeah, we do have some sneak peek artwork for the Snallygaster Situation, which looks amazing. It is so cool, by Heather Vaughn, and yeah, slam dunked it out of the park. How do you both feel about this artwork, Michael? How do you feel about this artwork?
It's fantastic. Yeah, Heather is so great. I am so pleased that Renegade keeps going back to her for for this brand, because it is just spot on.
Yeah. And how do you feel about it, TC?
Yeah, I really love the throwback style she has. She has almost this like you took a photocopy and then you painted over top of it, right? And I don't know why that works so well, but it just really does. And so the art for all the cards, for all the characters and everything, they all like work together so nicely because they have that sort of photocopied old 1980s scholastic art feel, right? Like I get that feeling with a spooky edge, if that's weird. That doesn't make any sense to me in my brain when I say it, but it also it's just a cool mixture, and I really like it.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I feel like it does make sense. It makes sense in my brain too. So I think you're good. But yeah, now Desiree, you can cut to the My Father's Work. Is that what it's called? Yeah.
That is what it's called. Yeah. So My Father's Work.
Tell us a bit about it.
I want to talk about this one. I was given the okay to talk about it because Scott from Renegade has constantly just like put little snippets in when he was not supposed to. So I get to at least talk about it for like a few minutes and say some cool stuff, because it is Halloween. And this, hopefully it's up right now, right? It's okay, so they can see it. So you can tell there's one image of a slipcover, and it's got behind it, you can kind of see you're looking out like a Gothic window and looking over a landscape with an estate on the hill that's gloomy, looking over a town, sort of very Transylvanian. And that's the key, because My Father's Work is a Victorian era mad scientist game for 2 to 4 players that plays over the course of 3 generations of a mad scientist family.
That sounds so cool.
So if you watch the movie Young Frankenstein,
yes,
that's kind of more like what it is. I mean, I guess Son of Frankenstein, all the Frankensteins where they keep coming back and everyone just says, I think they'll be good this time. I totally think they'll be good this time. Yeah. You get to play that family. So everything that you have, you pass down to the next generation through like journal entries and experiments you've done. And hopefully by the end of the game, you've told a story of your family and you've become the most infamous mad scientist of all time.
That's always the goal as a mad scientist.
Yes, infamy, fame, scientific
passing it on,
respect, I guess. So, but the cool thing about it is, it is competitive. So it's a story game, but it's also competitive. And the reason why it took me 4 years to make this game, and why it's such an ambitious project, and why I'm super excited to talk about it, is because this game comes with a storybook and scenarios. So in the actual game box, you'll have like a scenario box that you'll pull out, and it will have whatever type of scenario it is, whatever story it is, and those pieces will only be for that scenario. And there is a electronic app off to the side that runs the game, gives you a storybook, but the key thing is it keeps track of all your decisions. So if you if you come together and you have to vote and say, oh crap, something weird happened, that decision might come back and hurt you 3 generations later.
Wow.
So it has a branching storyline that never comes back. Every game that you play of that scenario, that one scenario that you have, has at least 8 endings with multiple different things that can happen in those endings. And just a branching storyline that never comes back. So you will see things like, if you play your first game, you'll see a third of what's in that box. And then it'll take you, like 10 games before you see everything. And that's just one scenario. And then you'll have like multiple scenarios you can get into. The idea, the other cool thing is that because it's a story, I know I'm taking up things, but man, I love this. Because this is a story, the board that you use, the game will tell you what page to turn to in the board book. So when you start with a town that has a few places that you can go pick up resources and bring them back and do your experiments. But as you make decisions and as the story goes on, you flip to new pages in the board. So new buildings get built, time passes, and it becomes more gothic or brighter depending on the decisions you make. Buildings get destroyed, they come back. So the story, the book and the story and everything tells this whole like individual story that only you will have for that one scenario. And it's super cool and super replayable. And most importantly, it's inspired by like Mary Shelley, Dracula, Bram Stoker, like the classics. Not modern. It is all Victorian era Gothic literature inspired, and that'll come through in all the writing and all the set dressing and everything. And I wish I could show you all the pictures and everything. It's so good. For like a Halloween episode, it's like perfect. And I'm hoping, if I'm crossing my fingers, but we are working on this behind the scenes, just like we're working on Kids on Bikes. And I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, that by next Halloween, you'll be all able to be playing this game. And hopefully you'll still listen, you'll still tune in and watch the podcast, and you'll stop your game. You'll stop mid-game and watch, and then you'll get back to your game. You get back to your game.
Yeah, ideally, that would be great. I mean, I hope by next Halloween we're doing another show about it where we can be talking about that game next time, because that sounds amazing. These are both very spooky things, and I like it. And I like the idea of this multi-generational. There aren't a lot of games that have that element in it. And it reminds me of, there's this one book I read when I was like 13, and I've never been able to find it again. And it was like 5 generations of a family in one book. I still don't know what it's called. It was definitely a book that was way older than like what I should have been reading at the time. So I remember it being kind of raunchy, but yeah, I've never been able to find it, but that's what this reminds me of. And I love multi-generational stories. So I really love that.
I'm hoping that because you're into those types of things, this is the type of game that a lot of other people are into it too. And just to say that, like, this all plays in one sitting, so you don't have to like stop. How long on average do you have like an average gameplay time for it? I mean, it is a longer game. It's like 2.5-3 hours, but it is a story game. It's more of an experience game than anything. So you'll sit there, you'll have that experience, and then you'll just want to play it again. So hopefully, so exciting. Hopefully, but I'm gonna say 100% you'll want to play it again. You'll just set it up, and then you won't leave until like 6 a.m. That
worth night. It. So sounds great. Sounds something I'm super into. And speaking of sort of family stories and generations, to get back a little bit, Michael, to the RPG you were telling us about at the beginning, The Curse of the House of Brookwood. That is also a spooky game about families. So many spooky games we're talking about in the show. I love it.
It's October.
Right? It's
spooky season.
Spooky.
It's my favorite time of the year. Yeah.
Same. So how did you come to sort of create this game? Tell us a little bit about that. And tell us a little bit about sort of your experience coming into the world of RPGs and sort of how that came to be as well.
Sure. Well, first of all, TC, I think you and I need to sit down and play a role-playing game together. I think you would really dig The Curse of the House of Brookwood.
I think I probably would, yeah.
So it is also a game where you are playing multiple generations of a cursed family.
Love it.
The first thing you do as a group is you sit down and you figure out who the progenitor of your curse is, and you essentially build the world that your story is going to take place in, build the curse that has cursed your family. And then you can play in different eras. So every generation of your family that you play takes place in a different era. So you can start at any point. So you could start in Victorian times and then play all the way up to modern times. You could start in like the 1950s for like a Dark Shadows soap opera kind of feel, and work your way forward to like punks in the 1980s, and it all just works. It's very similar to actually what you were talking about for your game, DC.
No, it's fine. It's totally fine. Like crossover is good.
It's amazing. No, I'm excited about it.
It's like these are things that like I want to play RPGs that are like this. I want to play board games that are like this. And there is so much space for this. Like the Gothic horror is just empty.
I hope you folks want these games, because we've got 2 of them. So what's really cool is the things that, so just like what you've got going with your design, TC, things carry forward from generation to generation. So the good things, the bad things, have a direct effect on what the next family will have available to them.
Do you have angry mobs with pitchforks? Torches. I wanted to say both words at the same time. Pitch torches.
Pitch torches.
It's not a requirement, because generally, what's for Brookwood, what's driving the changes from generation to generation are the relationships between your family members. So you might have a sibling rivalry that is haunting your relationship with your older brother, or you might have a daughter that desperately needs the approval of her mother that's very withholding, or you might have a dark secret that you're keeping from the rest of the family because you're a black sheep. And all of that, the game is designed so all of that just comes out onto the table. You're incentivized, you get rewarded as part of the system for hinting at the things that are in your closet, and at the end you get rewarded if you manage to bring them out.
That sounds like it's creating a lot of drama in the game, which I also am a big fan of in RPGs, when everyone has like little secrets and people are just like, this might be a thing. That's sort of that sizzling underneath the surface of a character, which I really enjoy.
100%. Yeah. So the game started as a game I designed to play with my friends that could meet once a year. And we wanted something that we could just play it once, but then it would carry over to the next year when we would play again. And so the natural form that took was a family, but then every time we play, it's a new generation of that family. And then I had the good luck of talking to a close friend, Brian Bin, who's a fantastic writer, and he and I worked together, and he wrote the book, and based on all of the work that I had been doing on it, to playing it with friends and other things, and it's that, so it's now in its current form.
That's so cool. And I love that it became sort of, this is like a labor of just like passion and joy, because it's just something you were playing with your friends. Also, I love that you were able to do that, as I'm assuming then every time you would gather, it was just a new generation, which means that you can remember some of the things, but you don't have to be as spot on as like, last episode we talked to this NPC who is named like Jim John the Giant. You have to, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, there's so many times I've played games and we come back and everyone's like flipping through their notes, like, this has been like a while now. What were we doing last time? Who am I?
Yeah, I play D&D once a week, and it's a struggle sometimes for us to remember what happened just the last week.
I have the same problem. That's why I'm always frantically taking notes whenever I play RPGs. People are like, what is that? I'm like, I have a notebook for every RPG because I do not trust my memory. So I feel that. That's really, really awesome. And where can, so this is already out. So where can we check that out as well?
So we did a Kickstarter last fall, and it's now out in a couple places. You can find it. You can get a lovely hard copy at indiepressrevolution.com.
Okay.
And it comes with a PDF. There's also a PDF version that's on sale right now on itch.io.
Ooh.
I'm writing it down because I'm like, I need that hardcover because it looks really cool. So I'm making notes myself. That's super awesome. And I love that these are all spooky stories. And I love that you both have a spooky story that is about generational families. It actually reminds me of Betrayal Legacy, which also kind of has that generational feel to it. But I like that this is more about the characters as opposed to, I mean, that's more about the setting in my mind.
Right.
You're building a setting.
Building the house out. Yeah.
Yeah. And everyone is a lot more loose, like playing that. Every time we played a new episode, we'd have these new characters, but they were very loosely connected at points to other people.
Yeah.
So this sounds like you're also building not just a character, but you're building like the story of relationships and how those carry over, which is very exciting, I think. And so obviously we're all super into horror stories here. So when did that start for both of you? And, you know, were you always attracted to monsters and horror? When did that start? And do you have a favorite horror story?
For me, I started reading Daniel Cohen monster books when I was in elementary school. So I don't know if you ever saw any of those. They would be like an encyclopedia of monsters or an encyclopedia of alien encounters. Like one of the monsters for Snallygaster Situation is the Dover Demon, and that was in the Daniel Cohen books that I read as a little kid.
There you go. And were those stories based on like folklore and like other experiences? Because I feel like I have heard of that.
Yes.
before.
Yeah. So those were, it was just kind of like it's
Compendium.
kid-friendly versions of like vampire stories and ghost stories and that sort of thing. Yeah.
I had a book that was just a collection of different vampires from different parts of the world and like different types and what they were. And it was like, I don't know, it was called like the Vampire Hunter's Guide or something.
Yeah.
And it was just each page was like a different type. But I still come back to that sometimes when I'm talking to people about monsters. And I'll be like, oh, you know, like this type of vampire has metal teeth. And then people are like, what are you talking about? I'm like, it's from this book that I read when I was a teenager. How about for yourself, TC? What was your sort of intro to horror?
Well, I've always been a little bit of a dark kid, which comes out in weird ways. Like I've never been a goth, but I totally empathize with that because I was very dark as a kid. When I was like in 5th grade, I would write these. I'm gonna say it because it's uncouth stories about like young serial killers, and that sort of made people weird because I was very well adjusted otherwise, right? But I would write haikus that ended with "the blood is flowing," right? Because that's that's the 5. So I mean, we're talking 5th grade, so I'm surprised that like I mean, I went through therapy at that age, and now I kind of, as I'm older, understand why they were concerned and maybe wanted to send me to therapy. But I was very well adjusted. Like I really loved the scariness, the darkness of stories and how they can make you feel. I remember when I was young, the scary stories to tell in the dark book was always at the little library in school. And it was always out. And so you were always like, oh man, I finally got my name on the list. Now I have scary stories to tell in the dark. And I just loved it. I just remember the story where there was the spider nest that gets in, I think it's the kid's cheek.
Yeah.
Spiders hatch from the cheek. I don't know. I don't know what it was, but as I was young, I really got into these things, and I watched a lot of like the Jason movies with my mom way too young.
Oh yeah.
But they were hilarious.
And you know, it's really weird. I watched a lot of Chucky movies with my dad when I was a kid. And yeah, my mom, I don't think was very happy with it, but I think that is part of what, I don't know. Michael, did you ever watch any horror movies when you were really young? Because I feel like that definitely does something to our brain.
I don't know. I was actually kind of sheltered when I was very young.
Okay.
Which I think that made me more into horror when I got older. So like Gremlins was the height of scary when I was a kid.
Gremlins is pretty scary though, actually. Like if you go back to it today, by today's standards, it would be terrifying, I think. So I'm with you.
Goosebumps.
Goosebumps. Oh my goodness. I was just watching Goosebumps before we jumped into this, actually. I was watching the episode where they are dogs. And then we watched the one because it's on Netflix right now here in Canada.
Oh, really?
And the one where he's the plant dad. but we're in the middle. So it was, to be continued. So
we
I
have
don't know.
Are You Afraid of the Dark there too?
Yes. Yeah. Are You Afraid of the Dark? I believe Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps are actually both Canadian productions.
Really?
Don't quote me on this, but I think they were both. Yeah. I know at least Goosebumps, I believe, was filmed in parts of Toronto. So yeah, people in the chat can let me know if I'm wrong about that. And speaking of the chat, I do have the code word for you for that giveaway of Kids on Bikes hardcover deluxe edition. So the code word is Monster Mash. So it is now time, if you want to plug that in the chat. Monster Mash is your code word, phrase. I guess it's more of a phrase. And I will also remind you, if you do have any questions for us, or you want to tell me I'm wrong about Are You Afraid of the Dark or Goosebumps, please let us know in the chat those questions. And yeah, did either of you have an iconic story that made you go, is there a story that when I guess you're making games and working on them, or RPGs or storytelling or any of these capacities that you feel inspired by, that you always come back to, like a horror story that you just keep close to your heart or your?
Oh, for me, that would be The Lost Boys. I love that movie.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the first movies I watched as maybe like 12 or 13, and just was completely blown away by the intensity of like the vampires
so
busting through walls and
yeah,
crap spilling out of vampires as they're being stabbed by wooden stakes. And just kind of like some of the kind of like punk mentality of like the stylized sort of punk approach to like a classic story. It's vampires, it's Dracula, it's like parlors and things, but no, it's guys with spiked hairs and kids swearing, saying words they shouldn't say, and reading comic books to find out how to kill the monsters and that sort of thing.
So cool.
Yeah, they're so cool. Yeah, this idea of like vampires as opposed to being this, I mean, really this idea of like being a rebel, being a vampire, and rebelling even to take down vampires, and all of that mentality, I think is really cool about Lost Boys. It is definitely very stylized. That's the thing I really love about vampires, though, because I think you can have so many different, like we do have the classic, you do have the Dracula and the Carmilla and that kind of time period, but vampires have just like transcended, and now we have them we had them in modern day. We had Twilight vampires, which was a strange time.
Sparkle.
But they sparkle.
Just give it another 5 years and they'll be
back
completely
again.
New. Yep, there'll be something new
different.
And it'll be wonderful.
I'm excited for like technological vampires personally. Some kind of like tech vampire would be cool. That's so cool. And TC, what about you? Is there a story that you find you always come back to?
Well, see, the thing is, I'm such a game. I'm such a true gamer.
A true gamer.
True gamer.
That's the label now.
Yeah, I'm such a gamer that like my things go back to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Wow, I can't say that. And things like Silent Hill 2, where there's this sense we were talking about vampires, and I love the classic throwback sense of like decadence. I also like ridiculous gore for some reason, but not like the gore that's just in your face, but like when all of a sudden
Evil
it just
Dead?
happens. Yeah, like Evil Dead 2.
Okay.
Excellent. Just because it just happens and you're like, did that just okay, we're moving on.
Right.
Yeah, so like Castlevania really gives that sense, and you can feel a lot of like even the art that we just showed. I mean, it's very hearkening to like Castlevania and that style, and Silent Hill 2 just does that psychological horror so well. I just love the feeling of I don't know why I even like it. Like, you shouldn't like feeling claustrophobic or in the dark and making the dark more scary than it's ever been. But man, when you can't see things and they're just there and they give you just enough to like really be aggressive and then it's killing you.
I mean, I think it's
really
actually
scary.
Very human to really enjoy that feeling of dread, that feeling of absolute terror and that feeling of taking something that's super fine and making it to be this giant monster in your mind, right? Because I think it makes you feel alive is what it does. It taps into this sense of like survival that reminds you I'm still here, and that's exciting. Because I have this huge thing too sometimes where I'll have really bad I'll have really bad nightmares. So I'll wake up and I'm actually the person that will turn on my light and I need to sleep with it on because I will look at the dark, and because of my nightmare I will scare myself.
Definitely, like being alone in a house by yourself. Yeah,
and the shadows.
It's very easy to get yourself.
Falling asleep surrounded by mannequins.
That's always, that does it to me every time. Well, I keep saying I gotta.
You have to get the mannequins out of the room, but it's just, where else are you gonna put the mannequins?
I have so many. That's the problem.
TC, I'm sorry to interrupt. TC, you were talking about. I wanted to mention this. You're talking about Castlevania. Mm-hmm. There's an RPG. It's called Rhapsody of Blood, where you are playing generations of vampire hunters that are going into this big, complicated Castlevania style castle, and it also uses a legacy system.
Oh, it has a legacy system too.
Yeah, so you're playing multiple generations.
That's the thing. Like these things aren't like mutually exclusive. Like that just seems like such a normal thing. Like every Castlevania game has like somebody's descendant or somebody. Like if you want to have a good laugh, look at the Castlevania family tree someday, because it is just hundreds of people and they don't even make sense. They're just like, question mark was son of question mark. Doesn't make any sense that this person could be here, but yeah. So it's hilarious, and it lends itself to that kind of feeling, like especially with the real like gothic-y spires and all the moody stuff.
I always think of velvet when I think of all the gothic-y stuff. Drapes of velvet for no reason.
Curtains in the wind for some reason. I need to get really long flowing curtains for some reason.
Yeah, I feel like we all need that in our lives, more long flowing curtains. It's so funny too, because when you were saying Rhapsody of Blood, Michael, and describing that it's like hunters, I like want that, but I want that for vampires, like generations of vampires moving down. I would totally play that. Maybe to oppose these hunters in like a big RPG setting.
Why not?
I don't know.
Not to plug my game again, but you could do that with Brookwood.
I know.
You could just give everyone a vampire curse instead of the book.
That's when I play. That's definitely what's happening.
There you go.
The vampire curse.
Easy peasy.
And speaking of all these monsters as well, there are 4 monsters in the Snallygaster situation that we've kind of been alluding to. So we have the Dover Demon, we have Bloody Mary. I heard you both mention. Can you tell us a little bit more about each of these monsters and sort of why? I mean, we know about the Dover Demon now, Michael, because you let the cat out of the bag with that one because it inspired you. But can you let us know sort of like where they came from and just a little bit more about them in the game and what they're like and why?
Sure. Yeah. So. Yeah, so I'll speak to this real quick. We wanted to do something that wasn't just standard monsters that you're used to. We wanted to have things that, like one of the things that's really cool about Stranger Things is the Demogorgon. Unless you're a super D&D nerd, you probably never heard of what that is. You're like, what is a strange creature? And they managed to make it like do interesting things. And you weren't really like sure what is this monster gonna do? And so a lot of games they'll look to other cultures for monsters and like traditions and folklore. But one thing that most folks don't really think about is that the United States has a lot of really cool folklore. And so we wanted to do things that were like a little more, since Kids on Bikes is kind of small town USA. We wanted things that would be a little more relevant to that. So like the Snallygaster is a creature from like the 18th century from the East Coast. Dover Demon, that was a sighting in I think like the 1950s in Massachusetts, Dover, Massachusetts. Bloody Mary, at least back when I was a kid, was like the urban legend before there was a Slender Man.
I remember Bloody Mary and looking in the mirror. scaring myself.
And then, of course, a lot of folks have heard of Jersey Devil. That's kind of an iconic American folklore cryptid creature.
That all sounds really cool. I like that it's all also local. It's so funny because I feel like the one I'm actually the most, other than Bloody Mary, because Bloody Mary was definitely a huge thing when I was a kid as well. The other thing that I'm familiar with is the Dover Demon, but I feel like it's because I heard about it in a podcast where they were sort of going into the lore of that. But actually, I haven't heard of the Jersey Devil. That's one I'm not familiar with. I have to check that one out.
Yeah,
so that sounds cool. And I love folklore, so I'm all about that.
Yeah, that one's got a really complicated history that goes back through like multiple generations of sightings. So yeah, just look it up on Wikipedia. It's there's a lot to get into there.
Ooh, I'm excited to check that out after. That's really awesome. So and then I think we are probably going to go and see if there are some questions in the chat, because I feel like we're getting close to that time. So friends in the chat.
So far there are no questions. People are just gushing about these games and all the spookiness that we're talking about. So
sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, some people are sharing their favorites and like vampires and Mothman.
Mothman, yeah. All right. You know, and no one has disproved me about the "Are You Afraid of the Dark" and Goosebumps being from Canada yet, right? No one said anything about that?
Nope.
All right. Pretty sure I'm right about it, but people can come at me on Twitter if I'm wrong. You know where to find me.
I guess I have a question then. So we've talked about different stories and folklore and things that you both lean to or lean towards more or rely on or go back to. I guess for all three of you, what is one urban legend or monster that scared you or frightened you when you were little that's still kind of a little creepy that you think about when you see those dark corners?
Yeah.
Jaws.
Ooh.
I don't like getting into the ocean. And like
I don't either.
Yeah, but I don't like getting into the ocean for like just fishes. But even thinking about fish,
like a giant shark,
fish is just like nibbling at me. But but yeah, giant shark that's just there for some reason. Yeah, no, that's great. I don't want to be there. I don't like it in the ocean now. Yeah, but that's carried with me for a long time. I really just do not like getting in. Like I'll do it. Don't get me wrong, I'll do it. But I am like definitely suppressing some like childhood trauma for sure.
What about you, Michael?
I 100% relate to the frog thing. Like I was out in the ocean swimming once when I was a teenager, and I was crossing kind of like this I don't know, like an inlet, and it was really deep. And I got about halfway across and just froze because I wasn't sure what could be in the dark column of water underneath me. And my imagination started churning, and it just like took every ounce of myself to force myself to keep going and reach the other side of this inlet. That was intense. And yeah, I had the same thing, just looking at pictures of sharks kind of wigs me out.
Yeah, I feel that. I mean, I think water as well is a very common fear. We were talking about one of the other channels that I work for online on YouTube. We were talking about how in games, some of the most terrifying moments for all of us have been underwater moments, even in games that are not scary. Like even you're just playing like Super Mario, you have to swim underwater, and there's this horrifying feeling of like, I'm going to drown, something's going to attack me and I can't deal with it because I'm underwater. For me, it was playing Lara Croft and fighting sharks, playing Tomb Raider and fighting sharks underwater. I've never enjoyed. But I feel like for me, it's always still been, what was I going to say? Not really like, I don't know. The Exorcist really freaked me out when I was a kid. And I still feel like I see basically people that are possessed is what I'm the most afraid of. So there's been trailers I've seen where things like pop out of the dark into the light. I think the dark as well is just a monster I've always been slightly scared of.
100%. The monster you can't see. Yeah.
Yeah, just the absence of light to me is horrifying, because I'm like, there's something over there. There's nothing over there, but I'm like, I'm not going over there. It's dark.
I think possessed people are so cool looking. It's hard to find them scary, because I'm just like,
oh, so cool.
You just want to take a picture, like, nice.
I think for me, it's that fear of loss of control, that fear of you're not in control of yourself, and hurting people you love without having a say in that has always terrified me. Which again, I think is another very human fear, this idea of we all kind of want to feel free and like we're not being controlled, but we also want to have complete control over ourselves all the time. Very interesting. That's a good question, Desiree.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's see. Some people are just saying definitely Jaws. Chainsaws scare them.
Chainsaws, yeah.
That's a healthy fear. That's self-preservation.
Yeah. I go to sleep with that in the background. I mean, it's just like distant
nice
chainsaws.
White noise. Let me put on the sound of chainsaws before I go to bed. With all my mannequins around me.
We're learning so much about each other. But yeah, that is it for the questions right now.
Great. All right. Well, I feel like I'm going to ask one more before we go then, because I didn't get through all my questions. I have so many. Cool. So we kind of talked about that. Have either of you played Kids on Bikes, and what was that experience like for you? / what character did you play if you played it? What was your character like?
My deep shame is that I have not played Kids on Bikes, the RPG, nor have I played Tales from the Loop either, which are both like in the same vein and both ones that I'm interested in too. But I don't get able to play a lot of the RPGs, and so I'll segue and just say, because I get to play more board games, it's great that there's a board game version of Kids on Bikes coming out. That's called the Snallygaster Situation. Next year will be up, and we'll be all talking about it next year. Yeah, and
we'll all be playing
it. Everybody will be playing it, and you'll also have it in the stack with your My Father's Work copy. It'll be great.
Oh, I love it.
Great question.
Yeah. What about you, Michael? Did you play Kids on Bikes?
Yes. It has one of the best world building segments of any game I played. So you start out with you go through a bunch of questions that you answer that determines what your town is like, what the people are like, and sort of like, is it a logging town in like the Northwest, or is it an old factory town in the Rust Belt? And you build all these relationships, and who do I trust, and who did this one good thing for me way back when, and all of this layered detail that gives you this real sense of a small town and its problems and the things it doesn't want to talk about, and where your characters fit into that world. It's a lot of fun. When I played, I was the GM, so I didn't get to play a character.
That's so sad.
But I did get to create a fun monster, so it was all good.
That's okay, cool. Well, that's you can take that then. I guess that's pretty good. What was your monster called?
So my monster actually was the powered character. She was essentially like a lightning god trapped in a child's body, and she only spoke Japanese, and they had to figure out like who she is and where she's from and why she's there. Yes, and how it all ties together.
Wow, that sounds like a great mystery though. So that does sound very satisfying.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to both of you for joining me. And I'm going to mention that giveaway code word one more time. So for those of you, if any of you missed it, we are giving away a hardcover copy of Kids on Bikes, the deluxe edition, which will allow you to get all ramped up for this amazing Kids on Bikes board game that will be coming to us hopefully sooner rather than later, because I definitely need it in my cooperative shelf collection. Sounds really great. The Snallygaster Situation. And the code word for that is Monster Mash, in case I didn't say that in that long run-on sentence. And that will get you a hardcover copy of Kids on Bikes, the deluxe edition. Now, before we leave, remind us, TC and Michael, who are you? What do you do? Where can we find you, your work? Michael, let's go to you first.
Sure. Yep. I'm Michael Addison, and you can find my work at nerdypupgames.com. And I'm on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook at nerdypupgames.
TC, how about you?
Buy my book.
Yes.
Buy my book.
Buy my book. I'm definitely going to buy your book. So success. You've already sold one to me, and I'm sure many to the other people in chat.
Thank you. Means so much.
Yeah.
I am TC Petty III. I am a developer for Renegade Games. I'm also a game designer and writer. And yeah, if you want to get in touch with me, the easiest way is by Twitter. I'm Puppy Shogun. That's like Puppy the dog and Shogun the Japanese ruler. And also I'll just plug this one because the best reviewed hostage negotiator abductor pack, since we're doing Halloween stuff. If you play a solo game called Hostage Negotiator, pick up abductor pack number 9 because I designed that.
Ooh.
Yeah, I designed that, and it's the most popular one, so you should just do it. Or I don't know if it's the most popular, but it's the highest rated.
The highest rated. Well, it sounds like it's probably close to being the most popular then. I think we can lump those together.
We'll just call it the most popular and best.
Yeah. Unofficial most popular and best.
But yeah, Puppy Shogun on Twitter, and hey, again, just plugging stuff, like just you'll see a lot of updates from there. And also if you are interested in my father's work and everything, they'll be setting up a Facebook page in the near future with some updates and some background on how it was developed and all notes and stuff and cool sketches as the game moves towards production. So that'll be cool.
Excited for that. I'm excited for both of these multi-generational games, RPG board games. This is all very exciting stuff. You're blowing my minds, just so you know. And thank you to everybody that has joined us in the chat. Thank you to Desiree for producing. Before we go, just a quick reminder, we got some new things that came out this month that you need to get your hands on. So we have the Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid Rise of the Psycho Rangers expansion. We also have the Villain Pack Machine Empire. And we also have Tome Saga, Viscounts of the West Kingdom. So check out your friendly local game store or the Renegade Game Studios online web store to get your hands on those. Join us again on Mondays where we make it more phenomenal with Power Rangers at 6 p.m. PST. And we also have Vampire Wednesdays at 8 p.m. PST. So come in, say hello. I will also be here next Friday with some other amazing guests. Stellar is also a game you should play, as TC is showing it to us. I've played it and I'm obsessed with it. So, and it's really pretty and it's very competitive, I will say, for something so pretty.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
I play Succulent actually, which I feel like is going to be a similar feel when I play it. So pretty, but I'll be like, I'm making pretty plants, but I also want to like murder everyone at the table. Love games like that are ruthless. Mm-hmm. All right, friends. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, TC Petty III. Thank you, Michael Addison, for taking time out of your busy lives. And hopefully I will see you all again soon and we can play all of these awesome games in person whenever that is a thing again.
Thanks for having us. Happy Halloween, everybody.
Yep. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. All right.